Is web scraping unethical? And what is the future of online data collection? Watch this interview with an i2Coalition representative to find out. Today, I'm thrilled to talk with i2Coalition's Executive Director, Christian Dawson. Long story short, i2Coalition, or the Internet Infrastructure Coalition, is a US-based organization which speaks for web hosting companies, data centers, and anything tech or web related. Established in 2012, the organization has led many awareness campaigns, but we're going to discuss the most recent one, the Ethical Web Data Collection Initiative. So let's dive in. Hi, Christian. Really glad that you could make it.
My name is Christian Dawson, and I am Executive Director of the Internet Infrastructure Coalition, or i2Coalition for short. We are the home of the new Ethical Web Data Collection Initiative, and I'm happy to be able to come talk to you about that today. Thanks for having us.
Let's start with a simple question. Tell us what prompted i2Coalition to launch the Ethical Web Data Collection Initiative.
So first, a little bit about the i2Coalition. We are a trade association that shoots to be the voice of the internet's infrastructure, particularly when it comes to dealing with legislators and regulators. The people on the internet who have a job of trying to solve problems on the internet through legislation. One of the issues that we have in doing so and being a broad advocate for the internet's infrastructure is that when new segments of the internet evolve, there tend to be a good deal of issues that need some resolving, that need some work to mature to the point where you can clearly advocate for a business segment. And the web scraping industry is one where there are responsible organizations doing good things, and there are organizations that are maybe cutting corners or just finding paths that maybe shouldn't be ideal paths forward.
So we know that the data aggregation industry has many misconceptions regarding ethicality. So how does the campaign address some of the concerns that we have heard expressed in the market?
The issue is that not all companies in this space or any space are necessarily ethics oriented. And so part of the job of an organization like this is to bring responsible parties in the room together and to figure out how we can sort of put on paper what expectations are for this industry to sort of be considered ethical operators. In a way, what we're doing is trying to figure out how to set a bar. And there are going to be players that are above the bar and players that are below the bar. But identifying what that bar is collectively is an important task that this industry and most industries should have to do.
Web data harvesting is a broad process from proxy service selection to data scraping practices. Does your initiative touch on all parts of the procedure, or what factors call for most of your attention?
We started out with the perspective that all potential segments of that process are on the table. And we wanted to actually take a very broad view of the ecosystem in general when it comes to the different parts of data collection. So different types of companies can be at the table trying to help figure out what that bar is that sort of determines a base level of ethicality in the web data collection industry. So as we continue our process of talking with these companies and trying to figure out how we can collectively come to a set of principles that everybody can agree to, the goal is to think very broadly, think about not only the entire process, but the entire ecosystem of players involved in the process.
What does the group hope to achieve, and why is it important to the industry?
So what the group ultimately is trying to achieve in this first set of exercises that it's undertaking is the creation of a set of core principles, which ultimately will be in some respects a note to the public saying that we as an industry are collectively stating that these are what we consider ethical practices for the data aggregation industry, and anything that is not above this bar, at this bar or above it, we're not going to advocate for. We don't consider ethical practices. Having that on paper and having that clearly stated by leaders in this industry, I think is going to achieve the ability for the data collection industry to go out there and talk about solutions to problems on the internet in a way that gives them a great deal more credibility, because you understand that when they, as an industry, are talking, they're not talking about the activities of every player in the industry, but the ones who are behaving ethically, and that there's some grounding for what that sort of ethical baseline is.
So i2Coalition has previously led similar campaigns like the VPN Trust Initiative. Did you apply any insights from past experiences to this campaign?
We went through a very similar process with that part of the internet's infrastructure, where VPN providers went out there and they said, listen, we as an industry, we certainly have players that are using our important tool that does a lot of good for the internet for nefarious purposes, for illegal purposes. And that's not something that we as an industry advocate for. The VPN Trust principles are now in their second cycle. And you can go to vpntrust.net and read all about what the VPN industry is promising it's doing as far as its own ethicality. I think that it's very important work. I also think that it's excellent to see that work continues to evolve. They went through a public comment period where they had the public weigh in on their principles last year. It's something that perhaps the web data collection companies can look to as a model in the future, so that they can learn from the people out there in the general populace about what they're expecting from that industry.
Do you hope to grow the initiative beyond the 5 inaugural members that you have now?
So the Ethical Web Data Collection Initiative is currently looking for new members. They're looking to expand from the founding members that have come together to create this organization, because now is the point where the organization has been founded, and it is time to have these important conversations about what this initial document that they are in the process of creating should be. The more voices that are part of this ecosystem, the better.
So you often highlight how vital industry-led contributions are. I'd love if you could elaborate on this.
When legislators and regulators are figuring out how to solve problems online, they generally think of the internet as Google, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, a few other big companies. They're the ones that spring to mind. Or if they do think of internet's infrastructure, they think of the major telcos. But the fact of the matter is that there are all these small businesses, the ones racking and stacking servers and data centers, or having activities that basically drive the internet's infrastructure on a daily basis. And most of these are small to medium businesses. They're the ones whose activities need to be understood by these legislators and regulators to make sure that as problems are solved online, it is still possible to have a small business on the internet, because that's where innovation comes from. You have to create an environment where you can still start an internet company out of your basement or your dorm room or the middle of nowhere.
So what would you say to an executive at another data aggregation company interested in becoming part of the initiative?
So if you were part of another data aggregation company, and you're considering becoming a part of this initiative, I would say that the work that we're doing right now is going to change this industry. It's going to make it so that, first of all, our goal is to have a really clear and effective document that we put out there to the rest of the world and really get recognized. So like when you are talking about what is right and wrong to do, you will hopefully be referring to this document. Your organization being associated with this document is, I think, an important step in making sure that this industry matures. The goal immediately following that is to look to ways where this industry can better advocate for itself. The industry doesn't want to advocate for its players that aren't playing by the rules. The industry doesn't want to advocate for players that are causing problems that are leading to people considering legislation against this industry. They want to advocate for the groups of players within this industry that are playing by the rules and that are coming together collectively to try to figure out how to make this industry a better, safer place. I would say that you should think strongly about being part of that group that's trying to play nice together and figure out a path forward that's going to take this industry to the next level.
Is there any way a regular consumer could contribute to the initiative on a personal level?
I don't think that they're quite there yet. They need to finish internal conversations before they can have a draft of principles. But my full expectation is that they're going to take the work that they do over the next few months in figuring out what they believe are the core principles that make up a moral and just collection of activities within this space. And they want to put them before the average person. So the average person can give them feedback and let these companies know what they expect. When that happens, you should absolutely get yourself involved. Make sure that you comment, make sure that you participate in any collective outreach that this group does so that your voice can be heard.
And last, let's discuss the future. Do you see any tendencies in how different industries evolve in terms of ethicality? And if so, what stage is data collection at?
So what we tend to find in any new industry is there tends to be a good deal of new entrants into the space that are trying new things. And when you end up trying new things, some of them end up being outside the bounds of what we would call ethics or legality. It tends to happen more at the beginning of an industry than it does in a more mature industry. And that's a cycle that's repeated itself through the history of the internet, but probably the history of every type of new industry that's ever come up in the history of humankind. So that's basically what it is we're trying to foster with this group. We're trying to take the companies that want to see this part of the industry mature, who want to figure out how it can follow the rules by really starting to put some of those rules on paper. And we're going to try and move it past a gold rush stage and into a mature stage. It's an important step in making sure that i2Coalition follows its mandate of ensuring that it tries to create a voice that builds a better internet and makes the internet a better, safer place.
Well, thank you so much, Christian, for sharing all your insights. It's been wonderful. I really appreciate it.
So again, I thank you for your time today. I thank you for listening. And if you are a part of the data aggregation industry, please reach out. Please be a part of this important process. I look forward to it.
Well, I hope this interview busted some web scraping myths and sparked your curiosity. If you do want to learn more, watch our interview with Oxy Labs, a member of the Ethical Web Data Collection Initiative. The link is here and in the description, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.